Hi guys, Sarah here and welcome to Novel Expectations. Today I'm coming to you with my weekly wrap-up for weeks 16 and 17. So yeah, sorry for no videos last week guys. The weekend totally got away from me and I pre-record all my videos for the week on Sundays. And I'm not kidding, I was running around all day long on Sunday and I came home and it was like, oh my gosh, when did it get to be 9 p.m.? So again, I do apologize. So we're going to be cramming the last 2 weeks worth of wrap-ups into this video. So I hope you guys enjoy. So let's start off with my challenges. So far I am 4 books ahead of schedule according to Goodreads. I am really super pleased with that. For my A to Z author challenge, I'm still only at 14 out of 26 authors read. For my A to Z title challenge, I have now gone up to 16 out of 26 titles. So I only have 10 more different letters to get to by the end of the year. So that's fantastic. For my 2016 How Many Pages Challenge, I've now read 9,659 pages out of 25,000 pages, which means that I'm at 38% so far, and it's not even the end of April yet, so that's pretty good. Jelly Belly Jelly Bean Challenge, as per usual, still no flavors completed. So let's get into the books that I finished this week, or the last couple weeks. So the first book that I finished last week was The Bachelor Girl's Guide to Murder by Rachel McMillan. This is the first book in the Herringford and Watt series. It was published in 2016, and I gave it 4 stars. I really, really love this book. It's a historical mystery, and it's about 2 girls who are trying to be like Sherlock and Watson, and they are solving mysteries around the city of Toronto in 1910. I know the author actually said she took some liberties with some of the architecture and buildings and stuff like that during the time period. A good chunk of the book takes place at the Winter Garden Theatre, and that actually wasn't completed being built until 1913. So the book was a little ahead of its time, or behind the times, I can't remember. But anyway, I really, really like this book. The characters were so well put together. The only issue that I really had with it was at the very beginning, the first couple chapters, I felt like I didn't know what was going on. I felt like I was being dropped into the middle of the story, and there were other things that should have already happened that should have been explained. But once I got past that, I think it was just even past the first chapter, it started to make sense. And that was okay. It was just a little confusing at the beginning. Now, there is a novella that comes before the first book, but I don't think you would have had to read one to read the other. I want to go back now and read it. It's a little Christmas novella, so that might be a lot of fun. Maybe come Christmas time I'll read it. But this is the first in the series, and I'm really looking forward to the rest of them. It was a thrill for someone who lives in Toronto to be reading about places historically in the city, and you're like, yeah, I know that place, or yeah, I know that place. They kept listing the address for where the girls themselves live, and I had to Google search it to see, and there's still a building standing there, and it's still like an apartment complex, sort of. They talked about other areas, like where the immigrants, when they first came to the city, where they were living. And I looked that area up, and, you know, what's there now, and it's just amazing, like, a little over 100 years later, how much the city has changed. You know, I love history, and this book was just so fun. I loved it. I highly recommend it. The next book I read, one that I do not so much recommend, and it was Welcome to Icicle Falls by Shirley Roberts, excuse me. It is the prequel to the Life in Icicle Falls series. It was published in 2015, and I gave it 2 stars. If this book had not been a novella, I would not have finished it. It would have been a DNF, but it was only 50 pages. It was about a woman named Muriel and her best friend, and this actually takes place before the first book in the Life in the Icicle Falls series, which I'm currently reading right now. It's about the main character from the first book's mother and how she met the father. So the whole thing is that her and her best friend were teenagers, and this good-looking boy rode into town on his motorcycle. He had longer hair. This was around the time of the Vietnam War, I guess. And she fell in love with him. And her best friend fell in love with him. And it was kind of the battle between the two of them. Fun story. Like, it would have been a great story, if not for the fact that I hated the main character. I wanted to take Muriel and shake her. Like, honestly. She kept going on and on. Well, he's mine. He's supposed to be with me. I'm going to marry him. And the best friend is in love with him. And it's like, and she kept telling her saying, like, why won't she let me have him? he's supposed to be with me. Well, how do you know that? How do you know that he's not supposed to be with her? Her attitude, her very self-righteous, me attitude really annoyed me, and I just couldn't enjoy the story. If this had been a full-length novel, like I said, it would have been a DNF. DNF books, I give 1 star to. Books I really don't like get 2 stars, so that's why this book got 2 stars. The next book I finished, on more of an upswing, was The Winter Lodge by Susan Wiggs. This was actually my audiobook, and it is book 2 in the Lakeshore Chronicles series. It was published in 2007, and it was narrated by Joyce Bean. She narrates all the Lakeshore Chronicle novels. I gave this book 4 stars. When I first read it back in 2007, I remember giving it 5 stars, and I loved it. Not that I didn't love it as much, but I think as a reread, you kind of know what's going to happen, and some of the stuff isn't a surprise, so I think it kind of takes away some of that from the story itself. This was a really, really great story. This picked up with Olivia, who was in the first book, Summer at Willow Lake, with her half-sister, Jenny. And Jenny, the very beginning of the book, her house burns down. And that's not a spoiler in any way. It's on the back of the book. And then she ends up shacking up with the local sheriff, who she has been in love with since they were kids. This book also goes back and forth. Jenny has a lot going on. She lost her mother when she was only 4. Her mother actually took off and left. She was raised by her grandparents. Both of her grandparents have now passed away, so she's all alone for the first time in her whole life. And so it's kind of her story on how she's dealing with all these things. And the other thing that I love is that the undercurrent of this story also is Daisy from the first book, Daisy Bellamy. And you find out a secret about Daisy and how she handles it, and her friends come into play with something with Jenny's mother. And it is a wonderful, wonderful story about family and community and friendship. And if you like contemporary romance and you've not read this series, please do yourself a favor. It is absolutely fantastic. Susan Wiggs can write like no other. I absolutely love her, so definitely check it out. And the last book that I finished this week was Heat Exchange by Shannon Stacy. And I was telling my friend about it last night, and I said, oh, I just finished it, and I really liked it. She looked it up on Amazon. She said, well, I got to buy it just for the cover alone, and I said, I concur. So this is the first book in the Boston Fire series. It was published in 2015. I gave this book 4.5 stars. I generally have never been one to do half-star ratings. But I think it's something I really want to start because I'm finding it very hard to rate books lately. Like, I liked it, but was it worth 4 stars? But it wasn't worth 3 stars, so it would obviously be a 3.5 star book. This book, while I loved it, wasn't spectacular. So I don't know if it was a 5-star book, but definitely 4.5 stars. This is the story of Linda, and she was living her life in New Hampshire. She comes from a family of firefighters. Her father's a firefighter, her brother's a firefighter. She was married briefly to a firefighter. She doesn't trust them because her ex-husband cheated on her and all this other stuff. So she pretty much moved out of Boston and decided to restart her life. Well, then her younger sister Ashley calls her, and she has split with her husband, and she wants her sister to come back and help her tend bar because the family owns a bar in town, and the sister worked there behind the bar, and, you know, bars, gossip, all that stuff, that she would get kind of harassed about the whole split up between her and her husband, so she asked Linda to come in and kind of help her out. So Linda moves back home for a bit and then starts a relationship with Aiden, who is her brother Scott's best friend. So this is the story of the two of them and kind of having to hide their relationship and her dealing with the fact that she is in a relationship with a firefighter. It is a fantastic contemporary romance, very, very spicy. Let me tell you that. And this stuck out in my head, and I just had to mention it. This did not decrease the star rating at all, but I just found it kind of humorous. Oh, that's the other thing. Shannon Stacy writes great dialogue between characters, so if you like that kind of thing, her books are for you. But anyway, the characters in this book had an obsession with rinsing out cups. I know, the most stupidest thing you've ever heard of. But after the first time I read it, I picked up on it, and I read it about 3 or 4 more times in different scenes. And all I was thinking in my head, and every time I got to reading somebody rinsing out a cup, I had to giggle. Because I thought, like, I bet you any money. The author's at home with her family, and she's currently having issues with either her kids or her husband not rinsing out stuff. And, you know, to release her tension, she's typing it into a book. That's just what I thought, the most mundane, silly thing, but I had to point it out. And now that I've pointed it out, if you read this book, you are going to totally pick up on it as well. You're welcome. So let me get into what I am currently reading. So I'm currently reading Sweet Dreams on Center Street by Sheila Roberts. This is the first book in the Icicle Falls series. I'm only about 10% of the way in it. This is about Muriel's daughter, Samantha, I had to think about it for a second with her name, who runs the local chocolate shop. And already as I'm reading it, you've already met Muriel again from the book that I didn't like, and already I don't like her. Her second husband has just died, and I'm having a very hard time feeling sorry for her. I'm sorry. Maybe I will once I get more into the book. We'll see, but for right now, not so much. But anyway, this book is about Samantha and how she's running the local chocolate shop, and her stepfather, before he died, pretty much put the chocolate shop in the red, and they're about to go into foreclosure, and she starts a relationship, or there's something going on with her and the guy who works at the bank. So we'll see how I like it. Just because I didn't like the prequel doesn't mean I'm not continuing on with the series. I like the premise. I just didn't like the character, and hopefully I like the characters in this book a lot better. The audiobook I'm currently listening to is Trust No One, which is an X-Files anthology, and it is edited by Jonathan Mayberry, and it's being narrated by Bronson Pinchot and Hilary Hubbard. Now, Bronson might be a name that you guys recognize because he is the gentleman who played Balky in Perfect Strangers. And I'm having a hard time listening to his, not a hard time, but a hard time wrapping my head around the fact that the voice I'm listening to, which is fantastic, by the way, and he needs to narrate a lot more audiobooks, but putting one with the other, like I'm listening to the voice and I can't picture the character. But the character in that show, he was from a different country, and he was putting on an accent. This is his real voice, and it's just, putting two and two together it's blowing my mind, honestly. But, like I described this to somebody else, reading this book, or listening to this book, is like listening to amazing fan fiction written about the X-Files, written by famous authors. Like, this is fantastic. Not a lot of the authors I recognize the names of, but I'm not a big sci-fi horror reader, so that's probably why a lot of them I don't know who they are. Jonathan Mayberry I've heard of because Jamie over at the Bookworm's Buddy always talks about him. I think he writes a series that she really enjoyed, but he doesn't write a story in this, he just edited the compilation or the anthology. Heather Graham writes one of the books, which I'm really excited about because you guys know what a fan I am of hers. And that comes towards the end, so I'm really looking forward to that. Now, there are two narrators, but that does not mean that they're jumping back and forth. That doesn't mean that he's doing Mulder's voice and she's doing Scully's voice. They're switching back and forth between novellas or short stories. So you're not getting a lot of overlap, which is great. And I really like her, too. I've just started listening to the second story, and I really like her voice. So, yeah, definitely check that one out if you're an X-Files fan. So anyway, guys, that is it for this video. Sorry, a little longer than normal, but I did have 2 weeks to cram in there, so let's hope that next Sunday does not get away from me again. And until I see you guys next time, take care and happy reading. Bye, guys.